And we are officially live. I am so excited to have you all here this evening. My name's Garrett. I'm here with Caroline Ceniza-Levine. We are going to talk about how to leverage that very first internship or job and how to turn it into the next opportunity. So Caroline, thank you so much for joining with me. Could you just introduce yourself a little bit and share a little bit about who you are and some of the work that you're doing and working on?
Sure. So I think for purposes of this event, I think the most important things to know about me are that I'm a longtime recruiter. So I have been on the hiring side of things. I have recruited for over 20 years, including running campus recruiting for a global media company. And in that capacity, I hired, not personally, but thousands of people. So there were thousands of folks that I hired in different programs, both on the creative side of the business and the business side, sales, marketing, IT, operations, etc. So I definitely know about campus recruiting from that angle. I also am an adjunct at a university where I teach professional development. So I see students in that capacity as well. I work with several universities around career coaching, interview coaching. So again, working on those particular issues. And then of course, for myself, I have been in jobs. So I have had to manage my own career. And then I started my own career coaching firm in 2008. And so for 12 plus years, I have been coaching one-on-one in small groups, in large groups, job seekers, career changers, folks who are in a career pivot of some kind. And so I see that side of the desk. So I've really seen a lot of different angles. And I guess, even a final angle, I mean, I think of it a little bit as teaching, but certainly I do a lot of work with the media. I have a column on Forbes. I speak to the press. I appear on TV talking about the job market or career tips. And so I definitely think about careers from that angle as well.
That's really cool. I'd be curious to know, how did you go about getting started into just, I mean, I know that you came from the recruitment perspective, that angle. Is that where you got your career started? And how did you know that this was something you wanted to get into?
It's funny because I stumbled into the career world when I was an undergraduate. I didn't even think about recruiting being a thing. I don't think that you go into college and think about being a recruiter. And the thing with me was that I very selfishly worked in the career services office, not because I was interested in careers, but because I was interested in my own career and I wanted first dibs at jobs. So I wanted to be in the office where all the jobs were posted. And I also, my very, very first job within career services was basically the gopher for employers who were coming on campus. So I would hang around. So if you can imagine one of those interview days where, someone comes in from like GE or Google or wherever they're coming in from, they're interviewing, 10, 12, 14 students in a day. I'm in the interview space. And if they need some water or coffee, if they need to make a phone, whatever it is, I'm running around for all of the recruiters that are in there for that day. And I always got to talk to them. And I would ask them, so, how did our students do? What did you like? What didn't you like? And again, selfishly enough, that was just for me so that I could figure out because I was a freshman at the time, so I could figure out going forward what I would need to do. I found myself fascinated at that whole process. And so I ended up working in the career function for 4 years. I did 3 years in career services. And then my senior year, I actually worked in HR for a bank, a global bank, again, in campus recruiting. So I was in the thick of it. I was watching these recruiting events unfold. And even then, as much as I was super interested about careers, and you might think, well, then you became a recruiter. No, I didn't, because I still didn't think that was a thing. I was an econ major, and I was like, I'm going into banking, because I think as an undergraduate, you have like 3 jobs that you're thinking about, so I was going to be a banker. And so I ended up, I had interned at a bulge bracket investment bank. I didn't like banking per se, but I still loved the market. So I ended up in strategy consulting for a few years, but in the banking practice. So I loved consulting. And then I was a few years into it. It's a very, very tough lifestyle. I love traveling now, but I didn't love traveling then. You couldn't really do anything but work, basically. And I just am not that kind of person. I was an econ major, but I was also a music major. So I've always had these multiple interests. And consulting was just all consuming. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And so when I started thinking about what I liked about it, I loved covering markets. I loved the people aspect, the advisory aspect. And then I started thinking about, well, what did I love doing before? And I remember the career thing. And then luckily enough, I met a consultant who had been an executive recruiter. And again, even though I had been interacting with all these recruiters, I was like, what's that? Like, let me just, I just really didn't even think about it. And then I became a recruiter, and then on and on.
That's really interesting. I think that's fascinating. I think that happens very consistently. I've spoken with a lot of students over this past few weeks, just gathering feedback, learning a lot about how their experience is going so far this semester. And one of the things I often hear is that they very much like have their sights set on like that one job or that like one internship. Like, this is my dream and this is what I'm going to do. But we know in the real world, often that is not the case. Often we are gaining experiences and learning through those experiences what we do and do not like. But I will say one of the things that I just do want to preface, by the way, any students that are watching now, we have not started yet. We'll get started in like 2 minutes. But one of the things that I want to preface is the importance of networking. I think sometimes I'll talk to students and they'll say things like, oh man, like, I've got a lot of this project's coming up, or I got this midterm, or I'm like really focused on this schoolwork right now. When in reality, that class, that assignment, that project in 3 months from now will have no bearing on the future of your life whatsoever. Yeah. Like, once that semester's over, it's done. It's like mythical. It's up in the air. It's gone. And sometimes students don't realize how impactful those mentors in your life can be, and that few minute 30-minute conversation you had with that mentor could be the person that opens the door to like the next job or the internship. But I think
I've had so many examples of that just in my own career, and then also with people that I've coached or students that I have seen over the years where, in my particular case, that very first corporate internship, I got through a classmate, not even in my year, but it just happened we were in the same major. And so we knew of each other. And I let her know that I was interested in doing something my senior year. And she was like, she was a year ahead of me. So she said, I'm rolling off my internship and I was going to post it. And I said, don't post it. Let me have it. And so she spoke to the bank where she was at, and they thought she did a great job. So by halo effect, they figured I would do a great job and they hired me. And then my that bulge bracket investment banking job that I mentioned, that really, really changed my career. I mean, it really, let me know I didn't want banking, but it also helped me get every other job basically since then. That was through a networking connection. I went to an event that was hosted at my college, and I was just talking to different people, and there was someone that I met, and I actually had missed the deadline for this investment bank because they didn't recruit for the program that I ended up joining. They didn't recruit at my particular college. And, but she was familiar with the program, and she said, hey, you would be perfect. And she called them, and it was after the deadline. And she said, you have to see this person. And that only happens through networking. That isn't something that would have happened. She got me an interview. Now, I still had to get through the gauntlet of 6 or 7 interviews, but she got me in the door, and there's no way I would have gotten that job without her.
I love that. I have a story on the opposite end of that spectrum. I think it was last semester I was working with a student, and he, about a month into the mentor program, emailed me and said, hey, I just don't have time for this program. I've got a lot of classes. I got this midterm coming up. I don't have time to meet with my mentor. So I informed his mentor, and his mentor got back to me, and he said, oh man, that's unfortunate. I was really excited to meet with him. I was really excited to mentor him. I was really excited to learn a little bit about what he's doing. My company, by the way, is growing like crazy. We're definitely going to be hiring a lot within the next few months. So I definitely, if we were to hit it off, that could have been an opportunity on the plate. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. He just decided that he didn't have time for it. And then at the end of the semester, he emails me and he says, Garrett, I'm freaking out. I'm like going into the summer and I don't have an internship. None of the interviews that I had set up ended up working out. Do you have any like suggestions or connections for me? And I'm like, man, I got nothing for you. You kind of broke your credibility with me by not just completing the program and meeting with your mentor. Like, shoot, 30 minutes, like multiple, like maybe 3, 4, 30-minute calls with that mentor could have locked you down that internship with that company. And it's unfortunate to see that sort of thing happen, but it's like sometimes you got to learn from your own, I guess, mistakes and just kind of realize your priorities. Because I think as students, we think to ourselves, there's like one path towards getting what we want, that being a fulfilling career, and that being through GPA. But in reality, I mean, the studies show that 70% of all jobs go to somebody who knows somebody at that company. And so the alternative route of actually meeting people, or at least going both focusing on the GPA and the networking, having that dual route will leverage yourself and help you get yourself into a position to have more opportunities there.
Yeah, and it's a compounding effect too, because if you miss out on the networking, which gets you your first job, that first job gets you the second and the third job. Like I said, that bulge bracket internship got me almost, I can trace back so many of my jobs. People would see that name and it was such a halo effect. And it really just helped with my credibility. And so it was definitely one of these, it's like interest, that compounds over time. And it's hard to put a value on that. And it's tough because as a freshman or a sophomore, you maybe don't get that message. And then you're a junior, and those internships between junior and senior year are so important and so competitive. And if you haven't had a job, till then, it's very difficult. So yeah, hopefully you've got students that are on the line who are here early, right?
Yeah. By the way, it is 8:03, so we're going to get started. Sorry, students, we started a couple minutes late, but thank you all for being here. This is the final workshop of the semester, so thank you all for being here. Thank you all for sticking with the program for the full semester. My name's Garrett, as you all know, and we have our guest here tonight, Caroline Ceniza-Levine. I'm going to give a more proper introduction to Caroline in just a moment, but I wanted to introduce the program. I wanted to set the expectation properly. I wanted to start identifying next steps with the program because you've now been with us for a couple months now, and I want you to think about this experience, and I want you to think about how are you going to leverage this opportunity into your future? How are we going to catapult this mentorship program into the future of where you want to go? And I want you to start being intentional about that. Now, I also want to set the expectation properly. I mean, ultimately, if you come in to this thinking like, hey, I'm going to get an internship handed to me on a silver platter, that's not how this program works. But if you apply the skills that you learn in these workshops, if you meet with your mentor, these opportunities happen all the time. It absolutely can happen. Ask for introductions, ask for connections, ask for suggestions, ask for advice. These are the things that absolutely can happen, but I want to set the expectation straight. Now, for this workshop, as all of our workshops go, it is going to be about 45 minutes long of content of Caroline and I just chatting, asking each other questions, asking you questions I want you to answer during the workshops itself. And then about 15 minutes for Q&A at the very end. If you have any questions during the workshops, please post them in the comment section. One, that's how we know that you're here. But two, it is also how you can interact with us. It's how you can interact with Caroline. Caroline is amazing. She is fantastic. She's got amazing credibility. I'm excited to share with you more about her. But before we get started, before we start talking about internships and jobs, how to make the most out of them, how do you transition them into the next opportunity? How can you literally let this catapult your career? I wanted to ask you all a question, and that is, when it comes to the internship or job, how do you want people to feel about you? In other words, what feeling are you trying to convey about yourself when you were in that first job or that first internship? How do you plan on immediately setting yourself apart? Because ultimately, if we're not setting an intent about how we want people to feel about us, ultimately we are going to let those perceptions essentially come to us and essentially run in the ways that however people perceive us. But if we set an intention about, hey, I want people to feel this about me or that about me, if that's the intention that we set, we can focus our actions when we're in front of those people to be catered towards that feeling that we're trying to convey. So I want you to write down in the comment section, what is the feeling that you're trying to convey? And then I want you to add on to that, how are you going to set yourself apart, and what actions can you take to ensure that you are accountable for that feeling that you're trying to convey? post that in the comment section. By the way, I did get some feedback from some students, and one of the suggestions was to ask more questions. So I normally we'll typically ask maybe 2 or 3 questions during the workshops of you. This time, tonight's workshop, I'm going to be asking more like 5, 6, maybe even 7 questions, including Caroline's questions to you too. So just be on your toes, be ready for some more questions this evening during the workshop. But post in the comment section, what is the feeling that you want the company that you're working with to feel about you when you're in that job or internship? Cool, take a moment, write it in. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Now, the thing that I really want to talk about, we talk about it every single time, but it is so crucial, and that is the 3 keys to success in this program. And it's the 3 keys to success in anything that you do, but especially through this mentorship program, and that is strategy, story, and state. And by that, I just mean, how are you going to put yourself in a position to be successful? So when I say state, like physically, where is your body? Like physiologically, what is going on with your body? What is going on with your physical state? Are you in a state conducive for being successful? Or are you sad, mad, dejected, angry, jealous? Are you in a state not good? Are you hungover? Are you tired? Did your grandma just die so you're not in a good mood? I mean, I don't know what's going on with your world, but I can tell you this: if you come in with some negative energy, you're going to give off some bad vibes. I don't care what you're trying to do. If your body language is not on point, it will not give off the message that you are trying to convey. So what I'm here to do is I'm here to shake it out. I'm here to shake your body. I'm here to get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, because your emotions drive your emotions. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it out. I want you to get loose. I want you to shimmy. I want you to go. I want you to move your arms. I want you to shake your legs. I want you to move your body, move your torso, move your arms, move your legs. At the count of 3, I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. 1, 2, 3, yeah! Just let it loose, let it out, let it go, let that blood run, because when you let the blood run to your brain, you are releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for retaining information. You are getting yourself ready to learn, and that is where I want you to be, because it is late at night, and you may have been sitting in a class all day, or you may have been sitting at work all day, and you may have been stagnant, but I don't want you stagnant for this. I want you up and running and moving and getting ready, because I know that if you are moving, you are much more likely to retain the information that we give you. We've got a lot of good information, and I want to make sure that you get it. So get yourself into a state conducive for being successful. That's a fun exercise I love to do with everybody and get going. Now I feel pumped, I feel amped, and I hope you do too. So when it comes to your story, this is very similar to this feeling that we just talked about. When I asked you, what is the feeling that you want other people to feel about you when you're going into that first job or internship? This is the story that you tell yourself. Why are you going to be successful, or why are you going to be a failure? I mean, if you tell yourself like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to be a wallflower. No one's going to notice me. I'm just kind of chill, do the tasks that are being asked of me. I mean, you're going to manifest that outcome. I can promise you, whatever goal you set for yourself, you will achieve up to that goal, but no higher. So if you're telling yourself a story for why you're going to be someone that's considered, let's look at the answers that we got from here, you guys. Oh, nice. Awesome. I love it. So Joey said, I'm trying to convey the fact that I'm hardworking. I love working with teams, and I'm willing to learn how to grow together. You set yourself apart by asking questions, asking for help, being yourself. Love it. Miriam, you want to convey that you're dedicated to the product, so you're dedicated. Taylor, you want your employer to feel that you're reliable and hardworking. Love it. Andrew, you want people to feel that you combat hardship and you're able to withstand a workload. That's great. Samantha, you want to show that you're dedicated to the company and that you're beneficial to them. Logan, you want to show that you're reliable. Cheyenne, convey that you're hardworking. Sammy, that's someone who is unique and valuable insight. Lena, you want to be perceived as competent and trustworthy. Lizzie, you want to show dedicated to the job, what you can learn. Ashley, you want to convey that you're willing to take almost any task and with dedication and eagerness to learn. I love it. Those are fantastic responses. That's excellent. I love hearing that. So that's amazing. So that's the story that you can set for yourself. You know what's interesting, and this is something that I just want to share really quickly because I think it's fascinating. And this is just a quick tip about making the most out of that first job or internship. One of the things that I've observed, and this was in Robert Cialdini's book, Persuasion, he talks about this thing called what is focal is causal. By that, I mean what somebody sees is what they perceive. So when you're in the workplace, if you want your supervisor or the CEO or people that you really want to impress to perceive you in a positive light, you want to make sure that they see you doing things that are good. If they see you on your phone messing around with Instagram, like that's what they're going to perceive. They're going to perceive like, oh man, this person's lazy. Even though you may have worked your ass off, trying to show that you are a hard worker. But if nobody saw you do it, it does no good for you, because no one noticed that you did it. It's like if a tree falls in the wood, does anybody hear it? No one's around to hear it. That's a funny analogy for that. But anyways, the point I'm making is that if nobody sees you working hard, they are not going to perceive you as hardworking. So just, it's like not going to mythically happen. And this is, by the way, there's a fine line between being humble and being able to showcase that you can do the work. I think you want to make sure that you are seen and known doing the work, because that is how you can, a lot of times, can combat a lot of office politics, but also you can show that you are capable and competent in the mind of your employer and the people that you're trying to impress. And then the other thing, in terms of building rapport with people at work, one thing that I strongly suggest that you do, matching and mirroring. People like those that are like them. So typically people have idiosyncrasies when they speak. So maybe they rub their chin, maybe they pull on their ear, maybe they play with their eyebrow when they're talking, maybe they use a lot of hand motion. If you imitate, if you mirror those hand motions, those idiosyncrasies, they're going to feel connected to you. Now, you don't want to be obvious about it, and you don't want to imitate an accent, but you do want to imitate a lot of their physical body gestures, because that's going to make them feel subconsciously in sync with who you are. And by doing that, you are much more likely to make yourself likable. So if someone crosses their arms, typically I say don't cross your arms, because that makes you seem closed off. But if they're closing their arms to you, you can close your arms back to them, because that makes you feel connected to each other. They're going to be like, wow, this person's on the same wavelength as me. The point I'm getting at with this is that this is how you can help build bond and rapport with people subconsciously in the workplace itself. If you want to test it out, you can do it with a friend that's never heard this before. See whatever idiosyncrasies they do with their body language. Imitate that. You do that for maybe 5 minutes, and then introduce a new body language characteristic. So for example, if they play with their chin and you start playing with your chin, you do that for about maybe 5 minutes. All of a sudden you start playing with your ear. They're going to start playing with their ear. It's going to be crazy. You're going to be in sync. It's like you've almost synced up yourselves for doing that. So that's some fun matching and marrying tips for when you're in the workplace itself. That's how you can help build subconscious rapport with people that you're in the workplace with. And then the last thing, that is the strategy. So what are the strategies that you are going to take to be successful in the workplace? So if at first you try and you fail, what are you going to do to make sure that you get to the outcome that you want? If you want people to feel like you're dedicated and you're competent, that you're eager to learn, if you want people to feel that way about you, and the first way that you try doesn't work, or the first way that you try works kind of, but not totally, how are you going to put yourself into a position to be successful and continue to be successful over time? Because so often I see that people are really, really hard working for like the first 2 weeks, the first 2 months on the job, but then after that, they get real complacent. They look around, they see around themselves, and they think, well, they're not stepping up on projects. They're not stepping up on projects. Doesn't seem like they're getting in any trouble for not stepping up on projects. I'm just going to keep doing the same amount of work as they're doing, because why would I step up? And that's not the right mentality. If you're trying to convey something positive in the minds of your employer, in terms of your boss, or in terms of your supervisor, in terms of your company, you need to make sure that you don't hold yourself to the level of those that you're around yourself, that you've got to hold yourself to a much higher standard. So that is strategy, story, and state. That's how you can be successful for this workshop this evening. The last thing that I want to mention is the routine. So after every workshop, I want you to practice a routine. For this workshop, I want you to create a running list of 3 people you meet every week and 1 new thing that you learn about them. This goes back to being intentional about your relationships and about who you're meeting and what you're learning from them. Because so often we meet with people and it's casual, and we meet with them and then we let them pass them by, and we're not thinking to ourselves like, okay, what did I learn from this person? What did they do that was interesting, that stuck out to me? When we can start becoming intentional about what we're learning from other people, we can now start making them more memorable to us, making those conversations more memorable to us, and allow those conversations to stick in our brains at a much greater level and a much greater pace. So that is one way that you can do that. So be consciously aware of 3 new people that you may meet every single week and 1 thing you learned from them. Now, a way that you can keep track of that, take a picture with that person. I know it sounds crazy. You can post it on LinkedIn. You can send it to my email. That's how we can know that you did this. Or you can just post a random comment on LinkedIn and say, hey, 1 person I met this week was, insert their name. They're going to appreciate the shout out and say, hey, I learned from them that you can do this. They're going to be grateful that you actually thought that was valuable. It means that they spent their time wisely with you. It's a gratitude thing. It's not weird. LinkedIn is the professional social media platform. That is the place where you can showcase things that you have learned. And yeah, tag us. That's how we know that you did it. So that would be really cool. And then the final part, our referral program. Next semester, signups have already opened up. If you refer at least 3 students from your chapter to sign up for next semester, your deposit for next semester is half off. If you refer 6 or more, you don't even have to pay for a deposit. You're automatically in. If you could, I would love to have your help encouraging more students to take advantage of this opportunity to get mentors and to get this content. So let's jump into Caroline. So our guest speaker this evening is Caroline Ceniza-Levine. She's a career expert and media personality as co-founder of SixFigureStart Career Coaching and Costa Rica FIRE, a travel, real estate, and fire site. Caroline is a career columnist for Forbes.com and formerly wrote for Money.com, Time, CNBC, and Portfolio. She's the creator of online courses behind the scenes in the hiring process and making FIRE possible, and is the author of Jump Ship, 10 Steps to Starting a New Career. Caroline has been a repeat guest expert on CBS, CNN, CNBC, and Fox Business, and has been quoted in major media outlets, including BusinessWeek, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Fortune, Inc., NPR, and Success Magazine. As an executive coach, Caroline has worked with executives from Amazon, Goldman Sachs, Google, McKinsey, Tesla, and other leading firms. Caroline also teaches professional development and negotiation courses at Columbia University. Prior to starting her own firm in 2008, Caroline spent 15 years in strategy consulting, executive search, and HR. She's also a classically trained pianist at Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music. Caroline stays active in the arts, performing stand-up comedy and producing horror and sci-fi with FBC Films. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'm so excited for us to share with our audience a little bit about you and a little bit about some of your background and just ways that we can go about helping students prepare for that first job or internship. So I think maybe where we can start is if you could, I know we talked a little bit in the first 10 minutes of your background, and I know I just kind of gave an intro, but if there's anything that you'd like to add about who you are and some of the things that you're doing, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I'd like to add actually a couple of things to piggyback off of things that you said. So one of the things that you talked about was just getting pumped, getting excited, right? And you started doing the whole dance and the whole shout. And I have to say, that's really, really good advice for the students, because one thing I think that's central to my background is that I have been a longtime recruiter. I have recruited for over 20 years. I ran campus recruiting for a global media company. So I have hired thousands of people that are your audience, right? So I have hired so many undergraduate students, and the interview starts well before you think it starts. And many times I will have candidates, not just students, by the way, this happens to experienced professionals as well, where they get into an interview and it takes them a few minutes to warm up. And the thing is that those few minutes are the most impressionable minutes in the eyes of the recruiter. So to the extent that you can perhaps go into the bathroom maybe and do the dance, I wouldn't suggest that you do the dance in the waiting room, but I do tell people to, whether it's listening to the theme from Rocky or Edge of Glory by Lady Gaga, something on your commute into the interview, you have to find a way to get yourself pumped up, because it does make a difference. And specifically, when I say pumped up, I do think, if you line up 10 recruiters and you ask them, say, should a resume be 1 page or 2 pages? Or what's your biggest pet peeve? You'll get different answers. We're human, right? So people have a range of opinions. But one question that I've asked a number of recruiters, where I always get the same answer, is this. If you had a choice between 2 candidates, both qualified, would you take the more qualified but lukewarm candidate, or the still qualified but less qualified enthusiastic candidate? And without fail, it's always the latter. That desire trumps talent in a lot of cases. And so, and I've seen it. I've seen where a really talented candidate loses out because they seem hesitant about an opportunity or just not very excited about it. And again, maybe some of that is just because they're nervous about the interview or they didn't pump themselves up, whatever it is. I think that notion of getting excited, I think that's super important. And then another thing that you mentioned about showing up, right? How are you going to show up on the internship? And so certainly it's true at the interview stage, certainly it's true on the job. And my first major internship, and we were talking a little bit before the show, so I don't know if this part recorded, but I was mentioning that I did an internship for a bulge bracket investment bank. So I was working in corporate finance. This was my big break. I was so excited to be on Wall Street. And I have to say, I worked in and around banks for the first 5 years of my career, first in investment banking and then in strategy consulting. That very first internship, I am maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the job, and I'm leaving, work, and I get in the elevator, and who is in the elevator with me but the head of corporate finance for that bulge bracket investment bank, who ended up becoming one of the executive committee members for the entire investment bank. So he was a big, 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 big guy. And I didn't even think he knew who I was because I was so new. And of course, we're riding the elevator and I'm trying to be like really calm about it. And he says, "So you're one of our interns. What are you working on and how are you doing?" And we had a very nice conversation, but this is for reals, guys. When it's about how are you going to show up, you need to be in that moment. You need to always be enthusiastic and prepared to talk about what you're working on and what you're excited about at that firm. And then the same thing basically happened to me on my first job. So now I'm working full time. I'm a strategy consultant. I am 22 years old. I'm at another bulge bracket investment bank because they're our client. And if anybody is thinking about consulting, basically how it works is the partner and all the senior folks sell the stuff, and then all the underlings have to do the work. So here I am at this bulge bracket investment bank, and I'm alone. So I'm in the war room with all the stuff, and the client comes by, who's again one of the most senior managing directors of this bank, and he's like, "Oh, you're from the consulting firm. How are things going? Like, where are we on the such and such?" And I'm having this interaction and having to basically tell him what's going on. And so, yeah, you absolutely have to show up, and you have to be prepared to know your stuff, even when you think you don't know your stuff. So I just wanted to reiterate that those things are so important, the things that Garrett had said.
I love that. And so I think I want to take a moment right now to ask all the students, what is your pump up song? What is your go-to song that gets you jazzed? Like, what can you do to get you pumped up? Not just for an interview, but also for the job or the internship itself. So for me, my song is my go-to is Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. It just gets me going. I just like the guitar riff. I just like, head rocking with it. It just gets me jumped up. But yeah, I love to ask you students, what is your go-to song to get you pumped up? What can you do for when you go into that job or that internship? Not just for the interview, but every single day to get you, boom, I'm in the zone. I'm ready to rock every single day for work. What is that song for you? Or what is that routine?
I'll add two things. Yeah, I'll add two things. So if it's not the song, it could be a song. It could also be a motivational quote. So something that you write on an index card and you read it right before you go into the interview room, or you read it during your commute. And then the other thing you can use is a picture. So you can keep a picture of something that gets you either pumped up, if that's what you want to do, or perhaps something that relaxes you if you feel like you're too stressed out. So it doesn't have to be a song, but certainly a song works for a lot of folks. So I just put that out there in case you're not so musically inclined.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Well, that's cool. That's awesome. So let's transition. So I want to talk about that internship and when we're in that first internship, or maybe that second internship, or maybe that first job, I wanted to know from your perspective, what can I as a student do to set myself apart in the job or the internship itself?
So I'll put my recruiter hat on, and I'll just tell you some stories about really what made the difference for different folks that I've seen firsthand. So I had talked already about desire and enthusiasm. That absolutely sets people apart. And I don't just mean having a big personality, because I think sometimes when I say enthusiasm, I think people who are more introverted or who might just have what I call a quiet confidence, right? So you don't have to be big to exude confidence. You can absolutely have a very staid, kind of calm demeanor and still be confident. So it's not about being big or loud. I would say that enthusiasm is demonstrated, I think, best by research, by knowing the company, knowing the job, having a very clear reason or set of reasons for why you're interested in that role. I think the best example of this is I went on campus at a university, and at the end of the day, we interview 10, 12, 14 people at the max, and hundreds of people apply. I can't interview everybody. So I came up with a list of maybe 20 or so students that I really wanted, but I had to make cuts because I only had, I can't remember, 12 slots, let's say. So I had to make cuts. And there was a student actually who didn't make the cut. She was qualified for sure. I remembered her resume, but I didn't select her. She had no media experience. I was looking for a marketing job, and it was really important for someone to have some sort of industry connection. And so I didn't select her for on campus, and she sent me a letter. And I have to say, I've been recruiting for 20 years. This is still the best cover letter I have ever read in my entire life. And she is actually a very senior person in marketing today, and that says something. So she wrote me a letter and she said, I bid all of my campus recruiting points to get a spot on your schedule. And I don't know, how people do campus recruiting here, but in some schools, you actually have a set of points that you bid for different employers. And it's a sign of how interested you are. So for sake of argument, let's say it's 1,000 points, you can bid 100 points to 10 employers, or you can bid 1,000 points to one. And it really says to the employer, I really want to be there. And so sure enough, I looked and she had bid all of them for my poor media company that didn't select her. And so that was her first opening. But then the letter unfolds as to why she was interested in one of our subsidiaries, which was actually a very popular one and everybody wanted it. But she knew about our business, and she elaborated on the specific things that she's done that would be useful to our business. And I was so impressed that she thought about what we were looking for, that she didn't just write about what she wanted in an internship or how hard she was working and therefore she deserved it. It was all about, this is what's going on in your business. This is what I can do for you. I just want to have a conversation. And I mean, it was very, very impressive. And so I think that, desire and enthusiasm came across, but also in her exhaustive research. So again, she came across as someone who really wanted to be there, but also who really deserved to be there.
That's a really awesome story. That's such a cool story. I think really what you're conveying right there is just genuine curiosity in the opportunity. And I think that's something that's extremely attractive to a candidate, and it's extremely rewarding. I think I just, maybe to take a quick break here, I wanted to ask the students, what makes you genuinely curious about the upcoming internship that either you have or that you're pursuing, or the upcoming job that you have or pursuing?
Well, I'll add to that question, because this is actually a question that I ask my students in particular, which is, what internships are you looking at and how are you going to decide, right? So I ask my students outright, my candidates, why would you pick me? If I'm representing a media company, or if I'm recruiting for a bank, or if I'm recruiting for a tech company, or if I'm recruiting for, the neighborhood pet store, right? I want to know, how are you going to pick your next internship? And certainly you should be prepared to, if you don't want to write it down because you don't want to tell people, but you should be prepared for that in an interview, because absolutely you will be asked, if not that direct question, you'll be asked, what are you looking for in your next step?
And by the way, this is a safe place. You can write it down. I want you to write it down. What is your priority list when it comes to selecting that next job or internship? Is it the type of work that you're doing? Is it the amount of free time that it offers you? Is it the pay that you're getting from the work? Is it the location of the work? Is it, I mean, what is it when it comes, what makes you genuinely curious in an upcoming job or internship? What is that main motivating factor? I love to learn, what is your value system, students? So type that in the comment section. I want to hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, and again, be honest, absolutely, but then think about, because I'll be representing the recruiter hat here.
Yeah.
Think about, how the company is going to react to what you're saying, right? So absolutely, I think it's important that you're looking for opportunities to learn and grow, to be challenged. You might be looking for a collaborative environment. Those are things that are great to have, but they're for you, right? And so I want you to think about what's in it for me, the employer. And always keep in mind that everybody that you run into, whether that's a networking event or whether it's a job interview, the other person, whoever that might be, prospective employer or contact or whatnot, is always tuned to WIIFM radio. What's in it for you, for me, right? It's always what's in it for me. So just think about that. I always try to tell my students when I'm coaching them to, if you want to say, I'm so interested in a collaborative environment, that's the environment that I want. How can you take that and reframe it so that it becomes something that might be helpful to me? So even something around, I love being in collaborative environments. I understand that your organization or the role requires that I work in teams. And so this is my experience being in teams. And so again, like, see, you're kind of taking, this is what's in it for me, and then but this is what's in it for you, the employer.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask you, okay, I'm in the first job or I'm in my first internship. What should I be seeking for? How can I go about setting myself apart? What can I do to go above and beyond my peers?
Yeah. So I think you alluded to it in terms of doing a really good job. I think that was something that you mentioned during one of your strategy tips. And I would say that is first and foremost, that you want to do a great job in the role that you have. You want to make sure that you get a good reference. You might decide by the end of the internship that you don't want that particular job. I actually didn't return to investment banking. I went into strategy consulting, but still in and around banks. But I got some great references and I carry those references forever. And so you absolutely want to do a good job. Then, I would say in addition to that, right, as you're doing a great job and getting those references, you do want to learn. So I would be thinking about, what am I really accomplishing here? What skills am I developing? What people skills, project management skills, what technical skills, whether it be, the analysis that you're doing, or if it's specific computer programs, software, systems, or, whatever it is. So I would be thinking about that. I'd be thinking about the expertise you're developing. So if you're working in a specific industry like banking or tech, or, what are you learning about that industry or about that specific company? What are you learning about that type of work environment? You might be at a startup, you might be at a mid-sized company, you might be at a Fortune 500 company. Those are all different kinds of environments. And so that's a learning experience. So I would absolutely try to get a good reference. I would absolutely pay attention to what you're learning. And then I would say, I would also, while you're there, try to meet as many people as possible. So Garrett had talked about the importance of networking. Networking includes your colleagues and your former colleagues. So people, maybe you didn't report to them, but you worked with them. Maybe you had to get data from them, or you had to give them something, pass something on to them. Those are your colleagues, and you should carry that network for forever. And so networking is really important. And then the final piece I would say in terms of what you can get from your internship is your branding. So your brand, of course, is your experience and your background and your reputation. So all of the things that I talked about, but also just in terms of, when I mentioned like the startup versus the mid-size versus the Fortune 500, that's all part of you now, right? So you have experience in that culture. You have experience with these types of people. you have experience in this industry, in this type of company. That's part of, what you're going to reflect in your resume, in your online profile, in the social media that you curate and that you put out there. And so that all you get from your internship. It's not just what you did day to day. It's the things that you bring with you long after the internship is done.
Yeah, I to give a more specific, to add on to that, I think they have a very specific tactic that I think is extremely effective, is going and knocking on the doors of the highest executives at the company that you're working with and saying, hey, my name is Garrett. I'm the new intern here. I know I'm not specifically in your department, but I was wondering if you and I could grab a coffee. Or if you're of age and you think that they might be interested in this, maybe I was wondering if we could grab a beer sometime. Would you be willing to sit down and chat with me? I'd love to learn a little bit about how you got into the work that you're doing. When you say that you're the new person, I think that is one of the greatest ins in terms of getting a conversation that you could possibly have. And by the way, you don't have to be brand new. You don't have to be within just your first week. You can say that you're new. I think 3 months is still fresh enough to say, hey, I'm that new intern. I'm that new hire. I would love to grab a coffee with you if you'd be open to do. I know I'm not necessarily in your department, or I know that you're not my direct boss, but I would love to chat with you to learn a little bit about how you got into your work and just learn a little bit more about why you do the work that you do. And just, yeah, I'd love to get some insight as the new person on the block.
Yeah, and I would absolutely use your manager's guidance in that, So you talked about not necessarily having to do it your first weekend. I would argue that I would not do it your first weekend. I would do it at least 2, if not 3 or 4 weeks into your internship, just because you want to do a great job in exactly what you're doing. You want to establish yourself, and you want to make sure that your manager feels like you have eyes only for them. I say that recruiting is much like dating in that way. You want to dance with the person who brung you. So you got to think about making sure that your manager feels like you're doing your job. And then I would ask them, who else could I meet? I want to meet as many people as possible. Now, I will tell you that some managers are better than others about developing people. And, depending on the kind of internship you have, I would say the banks are a great job, do a great job in this. The banks and the consulting firms, I think because they're so used to hiring interns, have very well developed internship programs. And they set up meetings all around the company. They set up events, they have speaker panels and the like. You're not always going to get that. So don't be alarmed if you end up going to, let's say, a startup and you're the only intern. And everybody else is much older than you. So they're not going to have programs for you, right? And so you should ask your manager kind of what's available. Ask your HR contact, let them know that you're super interested in learning as much as possible. Check in with them, see how well you're doing, because you always want that to be your first priority. And then say, I'd love to meet as many people as possible. Who should I meet? How would I go about doing that? They might make, introductions for you, right? And take some of that burden off of you. And at the very least, you've checked in with them and given them notice that you're going to be doing that. And if your manager doesn't seem like they're going to be that helpful, you can always go to your HR contact. You can always also ask just people in your area and just say, who would be a really good person for me to meet? I'm interested in XYZ. And they can at least give you a heads up. Oh, this person's great about talking to the new folks. This person's really difficult, or get that person before lunch, or, like whatever it is. But there are going to be people who know more about the office environment, and they can help you.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point. The only area that I would I kind of sit more on the edge of ask for forgiveness, not for permission, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally get it. I get it. I will tell you that I have had, and it's not many. So I would say that most interns, I would argue, are not bold enough. So I agree with you, Garrett. I would say that for the majority of folks, I think that your advice is going to land exactly the way it should land. But there's a small section of folks that they hear that advice and they're too forward, and they focus too much on converting to a full-time job. What's the next step? what's in it for me? They focus too much there before they've established themselves. And I know that it rubs managers the wrong way because they're like, this person hasn't even been here for 2 seconds. And so I just put that out there, not to discourage you to talk to people. And like I said, many companies arrange for this to happen. And you should absolutely ask about, are there going to be events? Like, what are the different things that happen? Because even if there isn't anything when you get there, just asking that question might prompt the folks around you to be like, yeah, there should be something for the interns, and they might start something. So, I think we're both saying the same thing.
Yeah, totally. I just know, at least in my observations, oftentimes people don't do that. Oftentimes people don't take advantage of their newness status to set up conversations. And sometimes you see that with mid-level managers who kind of like took their lumps in terms of just duration of being at that company to get to that point in time to get there, and they realize they didn't do it. And so they might, for their own personal reasons, say, oh, well, I wouldn't do that only because I personally didn't do that. But that's not necessarily the right move. I
Sure.
mean, I can, I don't know.
Like I said, if you are getting the sense that your manager isn't going to help you and make those introductions, I had mentioned that might be the case. Some managers are better than others about being a mentor and supporting your development. So if you feel that that's the case, that doesn't mean you can't do anything. I'd reach out to HR, I would reach out to the people around you. I would just get a little bit of guidance, and I would also make sure that you're doing a great job. What I will say, the flip side to that, I hear you 100%, Garrett, you absolutely should do it, because I have had students or interns who don't raise their hand. They don't show how interested they are. And then by the end of the internship, we're 8, 10, 12 weeks into it. We don't even know if they'd want a full-time job. And certainly the ones who are always like, yes, it would be so great. Again, desire and enthusiasm means a lot. So you do have to show that you are interested. So.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. So I think, well, that's actually really funny. I feel like I have observed this with quite a few students this semester where they had an internship this summer, they got a full-time offer, and they were like, oh crap, what do I do with this? Oh my God, like hot potato, I don't know what to do. I'm like freaking out now. So I guess first I want to ask the students a question. I know we just talked about like, what are your priority lists? What are the things that genuinely make you curious about a company when it comes to like what you want to pursue and fulfill? I want to know, like, in your mind, what are the things, just for you and your own internal checklist, students, what do you want to make sure that you've checked off to know if you get a full-time offer at the end of the, if you get a full-time offer at the end of the internship, whether or not you would actually accept the full-time offer? Write it in the comment section. I want you to like really like think about like how, and by the way, I want you to think about what are the things that you can check off on your checklist, but then how can you go about knowing and assessing whether or not you can actually check that off? Like, it shouldn't just be like a feeling at the end of the semester, at the end of that semester, that summer. It should be more or less like a SWOT analysis, maybe that you do maybe once every 2 weeks, once every month, to kind of get like a check-in, like an audit every, a period of time, to kind of see, like, so you can look at data points over time as opposed to a feeling at this moment in time. Because I feel like a feeling in recency can affect and bias your decision moving forward. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I would say, for people who, I don't know if people listening are all going to be juniors going into their senior year and looking for full time. Even if you are looking for another internship, it's important to think about, would I want to come back to this company? Would I want to come back to this role or to this same industry? Because that also is going to give you a compass, if you will, around how's this internship going? Because obviously, if you are thinking about, let's say that you're 6 weeks into a 12-week internship and you don't think that this is for you, right? Then I would be using the rest of your time. I would still be doing a bang-up job because you want those references, but I would also perhaps be looking at other areas of the company. I would be meeting as many people as possible because you already know that you are likely not going to return to doing something that you're already doing. So it definitely helps you manage your job search going forward, whether or not it's full-time. It could just be another internship too.
Totally. And not only that, but with the propensity for people to switch jobs, building is the relationship with as many people as you possibly can allow you to get to that next level of an opportunity meaning that maybe that a person you were really close with, connected with, but at a company you just didn't feel a vibe with, they moved on to a different company. You've got that relationship that could open up that door. I see that happen all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. One of the other questions that I ask intern candidates, and this is something you can post in the chat too, because I'm curious how people will respond to this. I always ask, what is your least favorite job? Like, what was your least favorite job or internship? And I ask that not so that I can dig for dirt, but it's a way of asking a negatively framed question to see, is this person going to go negative? Are they going to say something judgmental or derogatory about a place that they worked before, which we don't want to see. We want to see that you are at least respectful and neutral, because we would want that same courtesy if you're going to come work for us. And then I also want to see what they learned from that experience and how they were able to manage perhaps something that they didn't like as much.
Yeah.
So not only is it thinking about like, wow, what do I want to do next, but what are those experiences that you weren't that interested in? Because you might get asked about those.
That's a great question. I love that because by the way, you see it all the time. Talking badly about your previous employers is not an attractive thing. It's probably the worst thing you could possibly do, because if you're talking bad about them, it makes you, the employer, think, well, if they're talking bad about them, what's to stop them from talking bad about me? So yeah, I would love to learn. Well, I'd love to learn from students your perspective. So don't name any names here, but I want to know, what are your thoughts on how can you transition a bad situation into a positive outcome in terms of what you learned from that type of
Yeah,
situation?
and just looking at some of the comments someone had written, about making a pros and cons list, right? When I asked about how are you going to decide, I would go a step further and say, okay, so what would you see as a pro and what would be a con, right? So that's another way for me to probe, what do you want in a job and what don't you want in a job? And again, part of this is to see how you do in situations where you might not be 100% interested. But I also want to see, if I'm interested in you as a candidate, is the role that I'm hiring for, is this something that you want to do, right? I don't want to hire someone who doesn't want to be in the job, right? It's not going to be good for me or for them. So I'm also trying to assess as a recruiter, is this a good fit for that person? So I think absolutely, I love to see that you're doing a pros and cons analysis, but what does that mean really, right? So what would be a pro, what would be a con? Anyway, I'm trying
Great.
to both maintain eye contact and then still kind of glance at the comments, because it's so interesting as they're coming in.
Yeah, no, totally. That's really cool. So you, by the way, it is 8:49. So students, if you have any questions for Caroline or I, please post that in the comment section. We'd love to answer that in just over the next 10 minutes. But Caroline, I want to ask you a question. So what if I'm a student? I vaguely know what I want to do professionally, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. How can I go about, like, I've got an internship offer and I just accepted it because I just wanted to get any experience on my resume. How can I leverage that internship to learn and hone in more specifically what I want to do with myself professionally?
Yeah, and so certainly using the internship in particular, right? You can think about, what did you like about it? What didn't you like, right? And this is different from your interview response, right? This is just your own introspection to say, let's say I really liked the people. Okay, what about the people, right? Is it collaborative environment? Was it because they were funny? Was it because they were laid back? Was it because they were all type A ambitious folks and that's the environment that you want, right? So you want to keep digging, right? Like, what did I like? Why did I like it? And then also, what didn't I like? And what was it about that, right? Was it the subject matter? So for example, when I was at the Bulge Bracket Investment Bank, I was shocked that I didn't like that internship. Okay. And I will be 100% candid that I thought the firm was fantastic. I thought they did a great job with the internship. It had nothing to do with the firm. I had, made friends there, and I still loved investment banking in the sense of I loved the markets, but I didn't like what I was doing functionally day to day. I was doing a lot of deal analysis, putting together pitch books, pro forma analysis, which was very, very repetitive and very transactional. And while I was there, and this gets back to Garrett's point about networking, while I was there, I met two former management consultants. And as I was describing, what I like, I was always positive about my experience, but I said, well, here's what I would like to have that I'm not seeing in this job. And I described transactional it felt, that I wanted to work on projects for longer, that I wanted to see what was going on at the clients where we were doing these deals. And they said, oh, that sounds like consulting. And I was like, what? And I hadn't even considered consulting, because at the time when you said banking, you banker, like that was the job. When I thought of banking, I didn't think of consulting to bankers. So you will get ideas, right? So use your internship, do that pros and cons analysis and dig deep and say like, so why? But in addition to your internship, I would also look at the classes that you're taking. I would also look at the things that you're reading. I would pay attention to news that you're following and what you're interested in. Don't poo-poo an interest that you have just because you're not sure how you're going to get at it. I recently had posted something on Forbes about career lessons from Seinfeld. So there was this episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza he's a loser by all accounts, by the way, and he's trying to get a new job. And so he's out of shape guy. He's not very experienced. He keeps naming these jobs he will never have. He's like, I would like to be like a manager of a sports team. I mean, it's just quit. And then everyone's laughing because there's no way he's going to do this job. Well, I would argue that George is onto something in the sense that, okay, he's not going to manage a sports team, but he did end up working for the Yankees, right? And so his notion of like, I'm interested in sports, right? What can I do with that? Because there are other things you can do with that. You can work at the event venue. You can work. I know someone who works in accounting for the family office that owns the Mets. I mean, like, that's like a great job if you're interested in baseball. I knew someone who was the lead recruiter for Major League Baseball. She got to see all sorts of games. So there are many things that you can do that are not about being the general manager of the Yankees. Okay, so just think about what your interests are, because that will point you in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So Joey asked the question, he's asked, when meeting tons of different people on the same day for an on-site interview, how do you retain a fresh take on each new person that you meet?
Yeah, that is a great question. I read a study. I don't know how true this is. I read this a while ago when I myself was in college and I was trying to find an edge. And it was actually a study about if you are doing a day of interviews, so like that day of 10, 12, 14 interviews that I mentioned, if you're a student signing up for one of those days, do you sign up first or last or somewhere in between, right? What's the optimal order? And the conclusion was that if you are confident that you are one of the best, if not the best candidates, you want to sign up first or at least early, because then you set the bar and everybody else has to meet it. And it's more likely that the recruiter will see you and say, oh, but that person wasn't as good as Joey. Now, if you are concerned that it's going to be very competitive, so that it doesn't mean that you have low self-esteem. It just means like, oh, everyone's going after this job. It's a McKinsey or a Goldman Sachs, or everybody's going after this job. I'm just going to be one of the many. Then you try to go last or close to last, because then you get the advantage of the recency effect. Because invariably, it's a long day. If everybody is the same, the person I'm going to remember is the last person that I saw, right? There has to be something that differentiates you. So is that true? I would say that, yeah, in my experience as a recruiter, if I see someone who's amazing, I remember them. It doesn't matter if they went first or if they went last. But it's true, if everybody was pretty terrible and I just had to pick my favorite one, it would probably be someone at the end of the day, because I'm just like, well, I don't know, they were all just terrible. But it's never that way, right? It's never that everybody's just terrible, right? What happens typically is it's a bell curve. It truly is a bell curve. So if I'm seeing 10 people there are going to be 1, 2, or 3 standouts. There are going to be 1, 2, or 3 what just happened there. And then there are going to be just people that are just okay. And that's the way it is. And then if the follow-up question is what makes you a standout, research is huge. Not just because it shows enthusiasm, because it shows me how you think. And in today's day and age where everything is on the internet, if you don't know about the role, the company, and the industry, it's like, I don't know, like, what are you doing with your time, folks? Because everybody says that they want to work for McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Google or whatever. So show me, don't tell me, and you show me by knowing stuff about my company, which is just amazing to me. When I worked for the media company, I would ask people, so which ones of our publications do you read? And I could see that. The reason why I asked that question is because so many people couldn't answer it. They didn't know like what my products were. And that's amazing to me. That's true for anywhere that you work. So if I ask you about, if you're interviewing for Google, I would say, so which one of our like lines of business are you most interested in? And I don't expect you to be like, YouTube, is that yours? You know what I mean? It's like, you better know what business, you're in, which it is one of theirs. But I mean, like, you better be really, really sure, right? That's their business and that you can say that and you feel secure saying it.
I love that. That's a really great response. That makes a lot of sense. Well, awesome. Well, this has been an excellent workshop, Caroline. Thank you so much for being here. And students, thank you all for being here this evening. So where do we go from here? So hopefully you've had your 3 meetings with your mentor. If not, get on it, get started. The way that you show us that you've had, you track and you get credit for having those meetings with your mentor. Go onto your dashboard on the ambitionmotion.com website. In the mentor tab, you'll in that little mentor ribbon, just click the dates that you've had your mentor meetings, and then we'll send an automated email out to your mentor that confirms that you had those meetings. It's just a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, didn't happen. If you put it in and the mentor says it didn't happen, then you won't obviously get credit for it and just reopens for you to put in the date that you actually had the meeting. But ultimately, what we're looking from that is that you have your 3 meetings. That's how we keep track. That's how we keep credit of it, as well as obviously your attendance at the workshops. That's how we know that you successfully completed the program. In early December, I will send you a link to a post-program assessment. It's just a post-program survey to gather your feedback on the program, on the experience this semester. Insert your responses. Once you do, I'll follow up with you about returning your deposit. That is how we will complete the program. Now, I just want to remind you all, the deliverable from tonight's workshop: meet 3 people every single week, identify one thing that you learned from them, that from each person, and then take a picture of them, post what you learned from them on LinkedIn, tag us in that post, and then we know that you did this, and that's how we can give you credit for it. And then, yeah, the referral program for next semester. If you could help us encourage more students from your chapter to get involved, to participate in the program next semester, I would greatly appreciate your help. So, Caroline, thank you for being here. How can students find you? How can students connect with you? How can students learn more about you and your work and things that you're doing?
Yeah, so the best way is to interact with me in commenting and reading what I put out there. So on SixFigureStart, I blog every single week, and I created a course that is very similar to what you and I were talking about, Garrett, in terms of me putting my recruiter hat on and basically saying how things work during the hiring process. So I created a course called Behind the Scenes in the Hiring Process, and there are actually 5 free lessons that you can get on my site. So if you just go there, SixFigureStart.com, go to the free resources, you'll click on the mini course, and there are 5 lessons about resumes, interviews, how to interact with recruiters, so a number of things where I just talk about, very similar to this webinar, what it's like on the other side and what I'm reading and what I'm looking at. So I think that would be the best way to get, I think, deeper into the work that I do. And then, of course, I would appreciate comments and social media shares. And I have a newsletter on the site that you can subscribe to, and that's a way of keeping in touch with me.
That's awesome. Well, Caroline, thank you so much for being here. Students, thank you all so much for being here this evening. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night. And yes, if you have any questions about the program or any other questions about the final steps of the program, please feel free to send me an email. Really excited for the next steps of the program. And then, yeah, next semester, what are we looking forward to? You getting a new mentor. So we're going to bring in more guest speakers. We're going to be talking about different topics. We're going to be talking about helping you make more steps in your career. And yeah, obviously connecting with the new mentors so then you can gain new perspectives and get new connections to help you get to where you want to be. Leverage this program, take advantage of it. I'm excited to continue working with you into next semester and even into your career after you graduate. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Thanks for being here, guys.